What's up, everybody? It's Carpo here, and happy solstice to everyone. It's June 21st, the longest day of the year, and a good day for thinking about various things like plants, gardening, and this morning I had a video the other day. It was kind of a rant I made where I mentioned evolution and creationism, and then Lobo mentioned something about evolution. And then today I was on my biology kick. I've been listening to various biology lectures, like Stanford lectures and some other ones, but I can't remember one of the guy's name, but putting all of the ideas of what life is into a format that's digestible. But still, it takes a long time to get to the points, and I wanted to talk about convergence here for a minute. We talk about divergence and convergence. Divergence, let's say that an animal somehow makes it across the ocean to another location, and that animal ends up evolving to look completely different, but you can tell it's the same kind of animal. And then they do genetic tests and find out that they did have a common ancestor, but they diverged at one point. Now, convergence is one you don't hear about too much, and this is the idea behind a lot of new thinking in science, as well as a lot of old thinking, but the idea that certain plants and animals don't look similar to each other because, or should I say, reword this, certain plants and animals are not similar looking to one another because they diverge from the same path, but rather because they're converging from completely separate paths. The example that one of the guys used was that he was looking at a picture of a mountain glacier from about 15,000 feet or something from the equator, an equatorial region. And he was looking at these plants in the picture, and he said, that's exactly like the plant from this other glacier, which was on the other side of the world, completely different location, but it was also on the equator, and it was also in a glacial region. Two completely isolated plants that are identical. He said that must be the same plant. When they got the plants into the samples, they were completely genetically different. There wasn't anything similar to them except their structure and shape. So these plants had converged on a agreed upon shape. And as they were saying, there's only a few different shapes that a plant can take in that type of a climate and environment in order to make maximum use of the environment and survive. And when we talk about random mutation, it's hard enough for me to buy that things randomly mutated to look a certain way, but then to think that two random mutations on the opposite sides of the earth in order to attain the same type of plant, the same type of animal, whatever it may be. And I'm sure this extends well into the world of insects and fungi, plants, trees, animals, anything you can imagine. But the idea that they converge is a big one to me, that totally separate paths of evolution converge on one shape or form because that form is the most efficient form. Perhaps not all in its entirety, but life tends to become more and more efficient. And that to me just lends more credibility, not to creationism and not to religion, but to the idea that there's a mind behind everything that is a subtle mind that's and I don't even like to say mind because that implies that anthropomorphic figure again, that a mind as what we consider thinking is I think that it's beyond our comprehension to what the universe thinks, but I guess that these life patterns tend to repeat over and over. And I remember thinking years ago when I'd see these shows where they'd try to show what aliens would look like on another planet, and they would show this big crazy alien with these very delicate features or something, the obvious things that you would say nature wouldn't do that because it wouldn't be convenient or it wouldn't be efficient. And then people would say, well, on other planets, how do we know that aliens wouldn't be completely different? We don't. But considering the same atmospheric conditions, the same gravity, and that life tends to form in a certain way, when we start to realize that when things form, they form in a pattern that's relative to the universe. In other words, you don't see, most meteors and debris that hit the Earth are, we can study the different chemical components of other planets, and but we're not necessarily finding anything different. You know, it's not like we're finding different elements on different planets. So what I'm saying is that these same elements tend to form these same structures over and over. And to me, it's blatantly obvious by looking at the Earth that life wants to exist, that life has a wish to fulfill its destiny, to, and whatever that may be. You know, everyone has their own idea on what that means. But there are still the people who think that there was this ball of rock in space, and some electrical pulse or discharge or something created some sort of an amino acid which worked its way into proteins and building blocks for cells, and then enzymes, and then all of a sudden these cells decided to get together and form these smaller living creatures, which then became organs within larger creatures, and then all these cells structure themselves perfectly. You know, billions of cells working in harmony to move this body that I have. And to think that that's just a random mutation, to me, I can't grasp that. It's but trying to put a label on it or a name is no better. So what I just call it, you know, the universal consciousness. It is what it is. But I think that the convergence thing really opens up a whole new way of thinking about how things want to take certain forms. And you know, it was funny because I was listening to one guy, and he was saying that a lot of people are scared of science. This is why I think is the truth is that behind why a lot of people fear science is not necessarily because they think it's corrupt or wrong, but rather that in the back of our minds we feel like as science exposes the secrets of nature, they don't remain secrets any longer. And when you take that mystery out of life, everything starts to become machine-like. An example is I saw this one video where a guy was talking about different diseases like schizophrenia and Tourette's, things like that, and how we all have certain genetic dispositions towards a degree of this or that. For example, I have perhaps maybe even a mild case of Tourette's. You know, I have facial tics and stuff like that I'll do. I've always known that could be a possibility, but what it is there's some component of me that is a lighter version of what some people have very intensely. I have a certain degree of OCD, you know, a certain degree of ADD, but we all have varying degrees. So rather than us being able to say, oh, these people have this and these people have that, we're starting to realize we all have everything, some more than others. And as science decodes that, it scares people, thinking that, you know, are we going to lose our individuality? You know, are we going to become lumped together as, well, this is your human condition, and this is what you are, and this is why you're this way. You know, psychology picked apart the human mind to where you can, you know, pin down a person's personal problems by the way that they act, things like that. Things like that do take a lot of mystery out, but it leaves the mystery that is still to be discovered, the ones that will never be discovered. And what it does, I guess, is why waste times with mysteries we can understand when there are plenty of mysteries that we can't understand? So once we separate those ones that we can't, and the ones we can, then we can start to really look into the things that are important. Like they were saying, you know, hundreds of years ago, people were all wrapped up in witch hunts for people who had seizures or Tourette's, things like that, because they were possessed by demons. And so much time was wasted not understanding why people were the way they were. Now that we do understand it, it works to our benefit. We have cures for certain things, and we have understandings and treatments for others. And some of the things that we once considered evil aren't necessarily any form of evil, but rather just an error of the brain, which can often be corrected, sometimes not. But when we all converge, I think that the idea is, does convergence mean that everything's going to become one? And I don't think it really has to extend to that point. I don't think that everything wants to look alike. What I think is that certain environmental conditions dictate which energy a plant or animal uses to evolve. So the area, it's very difficult to explain, but it's in my head, you know. I'm a visual thinker. I picture the things and I just can't put them into words, but I guess you know where I'm going with it. You know, animals, plants, they're not just random chance mutations. They are effective blueprints out of this matrix. And there's still a lot to be discovered about exactly what that means. You know, we are living in a mathematical structure, if you want to put it that way. And by decoding some of these numbers and taking some of these numbers and doing math with this, we start to figure out, okay, this is why this is this way. We can see the math, we can understand it. And some of those problems can be solved so clearly, and some of them can't. And so convergence to me would be one that really can't be explained by any modern scientific means. Why would two planets on opposite ends of the Earth at 15,000 feet look alike and have absolutely no genetic traits that they share in common other than the fact that they're plants? And to me that's an environmental programming. So it's no different than our environmental programming. So anyway, thoughts welcome. Namaste.